This episode of the Coarse podcast has been brought to you by Central Sports and Graphics Incorporated, family-owned and operated screen printing and embroidery business located in a historic storefront on Old Berwick Road in the heart of Espy. They've been doing screen printing for over 20 years. They have high-quality product at a low price. Be sure to check them out. Central Sports and Graphics Incorporated, 570-784-1212. Now, on to the show.
Hey, this is Wesley.
And this is Chaz.
And you're listening to our dad, Sean Rossler, on the Coarse Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is episode number 116 of the Coarse Grind Podcast with you this evening. As always, host, creator, Sean Rossler. How the hell is everyone doing this evening? Sometimes I can hide excitement, other times I can't. Who am I kidding? I can never hide excitement, so I'm not going to hide it now. You know, sometimes in this crazy life, we get lucky. You know, you find a 10 spot in a pair of shorts you wash. You get an extra nugget in your Happy Meal. You get it. You get lucky. But when you're a food podcast host like me, a lot of times luck is all you've got. Because I sure can't get anywhere on my looks. But anyway. So imagine when you meet this incredible figure of Bourdain lore, who just happened to be neighbors with your wife's sorority sister. It's a long reach. I'll give you a minute to catch up on that analogy. Long story short, we came into contact, right? Only to meet the man who rolls with her and find out that he's just as amazing, if not more so, at times. Beth, relax. A word or two, then, about this evening's guest. Tonight's guest is the embodiment of Asian cuisine. Hell, he, in my opinion, is the embodiment of cuisine, of the arts culinaria themselves. Over 45 years as cook, chef, consultant, writer, teacher, blogger. When you talk about having done it all, you can check that shit at the door when this guy is anywhere near the discussion. Having traveled extensively in Japan, Vietnam, Thailand, Singapore, India, being a consultant on Korean and Japanese recipe adaptation for U.S. markets. Again, he's done it all. And this isn't even getting into, like, the actual career cooking at this point. But again, done it all. Scratching the surface. From CIA to Dallas to Princeton, out to Napa, and now back to New York. Not only has he done it all, but he's seen it all. One of the most amazing turns, too, is that he returned to what shaped him as a faculty member at CIA Hyde Park. As I like to say, the true embodiment of an expert is that of a teacher. Since all of this has happened, he and his counterpart, again a certain grill bitch of lore and family, have encountered the unfortunate fate of knowing and maybe even befriending me and my family, poor souls that they are, and having worked under him if but for a weekend. I can say that all of the above is as promised, and then some. All kidding aside from my lucky noodles, which we'll discuss in a bit, to everything else, it is an absolute honor and a privilege to call this man a friend, and even more so that he returns the gesture. But before we give everyone diabetes from the saccharine intro, let's get his miserable, charming ass on the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between, tonight's guest, Chair of Asian Studies at CIA Hyde Park, and quite literally, in my eyes anyway, the man, the Chef Michael Pardus. How's it going, buddy?
Hey, I'm good, man, but you can't get diabetes from saccharin.
How did I fucking know that's the turn we were going to take right off that?
Just saying.
Yes, once again, folks, buckle in. I'm going to be corrected more tonight than if my wife and my mother were in the same room and we were talking. I will be corrected, and you will see a level of humility you probably haven't seen in 115 episodes. So come along for the ride, kids. It's going to be a good one. Starters, mains, and afters. Starters, we're going to talk about where the guest in question has come from, what shaped them to be who they are today. Mains, we're going to talk about where they're at, what they're doing, what they want to be doing. And finally, afters, a little bit more irreverent, a little bit more off the cuff, but no one's been injured in 115 episodes. So I don't see that happening tonight. So without further ado, Chef Michael Pardus, I know you love it when I really lean into the chef. I know you enjoyed it the whole night after the 100th episode, and then the day after. It was amazing, I'm sure. But talk to me about Chef Michael Pardus, where he grew up eating and what he grew up eating.
Oh, man, I hope my mother never listens to this.
Dude, my mother doesn't listen to it. I think you're safe.
Yeah, all right, good. I grew up in a small town in northeastern Connecticut. My mom was a school teacher. My dad worked for the phone company. My dad's mom was a fantastic cook. My mother, not so much. I like to say that I got into this business out of self-preservation. I see people like eating food and enjoying what they were eating, and I couldn't really relate unless I went to my grandmother's house on my father's side. And then I was like, oh, okay, so this is good. Why don't we eat like this at home? And it was, it was probably because my mom was busy working and doing other stuff, and, food wasn't like something she was intimately passionate about. So we ate what we got, and I just had this feeling that there was something better out there. So,
sure.
Somewhere around my 12th birthday, I think, I picked up a copy of Julia Child's Art of French Cooking, or whatever the title of that book is.
Mm-hmm.
And I made my mother a 5-course meal out of a Julia Child's book for Mother's Day, hoping that I would inspire her. but it didn't work. When I was 17, I moved out of the house and I started doing my own stuff.
Right on. So you said that the grandma on your dad's side was the cook. What were you getting there that you weren't getting at home?
She was just so passionate about what she did that, and this is not an exaggeration. It sounds like hyperbole, but it's not. Every year, the day after Thanksgiving, she started her Christmas cookie prep. And by the time you were around December 12th, she started pumping out 150 dozen Christmas cookies.
Jesus Christ.
She had a repertoire of about 7 or 8,
mm-hmm.
and she would just make 15 dozen of each, then top it off at the end.
Yeah.
And the way it went was like a dozen went to the milkman, a dozen went to the mailman, a dozen went to the garbage guy. Then, a dozen went to each one of the grandkids' teachers. And then, the big platters started to come in, and like 15 dozen started to come to each one of her son's houses, and she had 3 sons. and on and on and on until there was just like everybody that she knew had like homemade, like really, really good Christmas cookies. And I still, just this year, last year, every year since I've lived on my own, I continue the tradition. I don't make 150 dozen, but I'll make a good size. I'll make a good sized platter and I'll share them with everybody I know.
Nice.
Nice. It's just ingrained.
Yeah. What's the best one of the mix out of the 7 types?
If you're Eastern European, you know them as either kolac or kolacki. My grandmother was Czech.
Oh, okay.
It's sort of like a Blitz puff pastry dough,
mm-hmm.
With butter and cottage cheese. Folded, and then you cut it out and fill each like 3x3 square with either poppy seed prune or apricot preserve, and they're savory outside because there's no sugar in the dough, and then sweet on the inside, and they have a really good loft on them. They puff really well.
Nice.
So you get these beautiful little 2x2-inch fruit tarts that you can pop in your mouth. They're great for breakfast with coffee. They're great as a midday snack. They're great after dinner. They're great in the middle of the night. They're great 3 weeks later, even when they're a little stale. They're just fucking awesome.
Nice. Yeah, my great grandma. I didn't necessarily have the big cookie thing, but my great grandmother would make the hell out of some Lebkuchen, and we were of German descent. So I'm here again, folks. Here comes the humility. I'm gonna err on the side of the caution and say I think they're German in origin. They're the kind of molasses heavy, a little bit of licorice, and the heavy white glossy frosting on them. Rectangular nature, almost like a Pop-Tart, but not. And she would just cook the shit out of those.
I think there's probably something a little bit east from where your people grew up that my Nana made also, because I remember something there. It was molasses heavy. It was kind of like a frosted ginger thing.
Yeah. Ginger, maybe a little bit of anise. I think.
Yeah, but it was more molasses anise for it. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. I remember those. I can taste them.
Yeah.
Just talking to you.
Oh man. So. All right, so obviously there was this kind of rut then between, what your culinary upbringing was per se, and I think what you aspired to. And, all joking aside, I even had my mom on the show to tell her, I'm like, look, there was a bit of, I don't believe that I said self-preservation, but similar in nature, because it's like, where did I get this from? My wife asks me all the time, like, why do you care about this stuff, given your kind of meat and potatoes upbringing? And I think you hit it on the head, Mike. I think you come to a realization. For me, it was a class trip we went on. Sushi was available to buy, and I bought it not knowing my ass from my elbow. And that, I think, started it. For you, branching out at 17, where was that then? What did you do? What was your first plug-in?
Yeah, I was 17 in Boston. That would have been 1974. And so I got a few years on you. So I remember when sushi was introduced to the United States. I remember when the first sushi restaurant opened in Boston, at least the first one that I was aware of. Yeah. And that was right around 74, 75. And everybody else I knew was like raw fish.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know, sounds cool to me. Let's check it out.
Mm-hmm.
There was just like, I don't know, an innate sense of exploration and adventure and travel.
Yep.
I don't know, my dad was in the Korean War, but he was stationed in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And when he came back in 1956, I was born like 9 months later. And he was a farm boy from rural Connecticut, and all I heard for the first 5 years of my life was the only exciting thing he'd ever done, which was go to Japan. So we had Japanese china, we had Japanese art. My mom wore a kimono for a house robe. So I knew how to count to 10 in Japanese before I knew how to count to 10 in English. And when I went to kindergarten, I self-identified as Japanese. I told my kindergarten teacher I was Japanese. And she's looking at this blonde-haired white boy saying, okay, let's see what happens on parents-teacher conference night.
This will be a good one.
I was surrounded by the idea of Asia from as early as I can remember. So that might have contributed to, how I ended up being where I am.
Yeah. And, it's funny, and I'm not trying to necessarily shoulder up with, the likes and the career and the expertise of you. But my grandfather, on my dad's side, he was World War II, Korea, and I, too, learned how to count to 10 in Japanese. I would ride on his knee, riding on the tractor, and definitely a heavy Japanese influence. So I don't know necessarily if that's it. Like, my dad grew up in Japan for a little bit, and he would tell me stories. He has a Fuji pole, which when he was a Boy Scout in Japan, they climbed Mount Fuji, and they got it branded at different stations going up the mountain. And, so I don't know. It's this funny thing
That's
where...
really cool. I mean, I think those kinds of impressions, like, leave lifelong, like, I don't want to say scars, because scars seems like a bad thing. They leave lifelong, like, marks on your soul.
Oh, fuck yeah. Yeah, there's absolutely no question, Why did I care about karate? Why were Godzilla movies so big to me? Why is anime? Why is sushi, sake, all these different things? And I think it's because, this little twinge of, there's different culture out there. And especially, I mean, I don't know specifically where in Connecticut, if it was a bigger city or a smaller town, but like Honesdale, Pennsylvania, it's, you blink, you miss the 2 traffic lights we have in town. Now, it's a great town, but like, a lot of people go there and, grow up there and they stay there. When you get out is when you realize, like, wow, there's so much beyond. And, just that little twinge of, hey, here's this whole other culture. And here you've got a dad that went off, for X number of, months, years. Sure, that's going to probably affect what you do in life, Mr. Head of Asian Studies. Like, clearly that had an impact on you.
Yeah, well, I don't make the connection unless I'm having a conversation like this. But
Sure.
when if I introspect hard enough, I'm like, yeah, it kind of makes some kind of sense. But honestly, I never make that connection unless I'm talking to someone like you. Yep. I got lost. In my teens and early 20s, I ended up going to the Culinary Institute and studying French classic cuisine. I got out of there. I went and worked in French restaurants, like high-end and middle-end. I worked the California Mediterranean scene for a while. I never really paid that much attention to Asian cuisine of any, and I hate actually the term Asian cuisine because Asia starts in north of Hokkaido, Japan, and it ends someplace west of Mumbai.
Right.
So you got like 3,500 cultures and languages and cuisines all melded into that one term. So it's not a very accurate term.
No.
But I just was offered the opportunity to start working in that realm, and after 15 or 20 years of doing the European, Mediterranean, California thing, it became it was like a rebirth.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it was, and I can speak now. Now having had you here, hung out with you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What was to be an evening turned into a weekend, and I count myself among the blessed for having done so. But I mean, such a presence to be in when the passion for those cultures comes out in a conversation. And I'll refer specifically to fish sauce and your absolute adamant demand that it be somewhere in the house at every point in time. Fortunately, we had it, but the request for the weekend outside of more scotch, which we did handle, we handled well, was, you got any fish sauce? And I loved it. It was so endearing. I'm like, God, this guy fucking lives it, left, right, and sideways.
I came to the realization a bunch of years ago that you can break down human cuisine to 7 cooking styles or techniques and 5 basic tastes. Now, the cooking styles, you can look them up. There's
Sure.
It's like moist heat and dry heat, and 3 of one and 4 of another.
Mm-hmm.
But all you got for taste is sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami.
Right.
And nobody intentionally makes their food taste bitter unless they're planning on heavily balancing it with the others. So let's just throw bitter out of the equation for a minute and say everybody in the world is looking to balance sweet, sour, salty, umami. And it's the local market, the local forest, the local jungle, wherever you happen to find yourself, wherever you get your food, that's going to dictate what you fill those 4 slots with. So if you're cooking in Cleveland, sweet is going to be Domino white sugar. Sour is going to be Heinz vinegar. Salty is going to be salt, Morton salt, maybe, if you're lucky.
Yep.
Umami is going to be how hard do you sear your steak, or maybe do you put a dash of Worcestershire sauce on there?
Yeah.
So that's it. If you're in Bangkok, you still want to fill that sweet, sour, salty, umami bill, but sweet might be a really ripe mango, or it might be palm sugar. Sour is going to be lime or tamarind or a sour fruit, like an unripe star fruit. Umami and salty are usually going to come wrapped together in one package, which is going to be fish sauce.
Yeah.
And what I've discovered is, to the Western palate and nose, fish sauce smells bad. It smells funky, it smells weird, it smells fishy. But as soon as you use it, if you use it judiciously, all of that goes away, and all you've got is salty and umami. And if you want to make something taste better, add a dash of fish sauce to it.
You're absolutely right. And I will volunteer myself as tribute as among the converted. Now, that's not to say when I smelled it initially and when I first started to use it, which is years ago, I didn't smell it and go like, oh man, this smells like shit. A lot of people do that. But I did smell it, and I admit to my Western nose and, olfactory senses, it did kind of put me on a slight tilt. When I started to add it, like you said, wow, and I'm currently kind of making some dishes to help Greta's going through a kind of reassignment of some food types to help her stomach health, and among them was cabbage, and cabbage was okay, but it's like, well, how many ways can you have cabbage? I steamed the cabbage, I then put it in with coconut oil, and I stir-fried it with a mixture of lime juice and fish sauce. And she came out, and there were crispy ends on it, every possible texture you could hit. There was soft, there was crispy, there was crunchy, because again, I used a big steel pan that I have in kind of a wok format. It's got high sides. I push stuff out to the sides and let stuff take a turn on the direct heat. And she looked at me. She's like, oh, my God, this is amazing. What is that amazing taste? And I'm like, you're going to hate me, and you're going to think of one person when I show it to you. And she said, what is it? I ran out to the refrigerator. I grabbed it. She's like, oh, my God, Pardus. So there you go. You have inspired a household, sir.
Well, all you did was take something from Eastern Europe and, put a little dash of Korea or Vietnam or Thailand, or if you want to go back far enough, it probably all started in Greece anyway.
Yeah, for sure. So do me a favor, too, because, again, I don't know the next time I'm going to have a chair of a fucking department on my show. So help folks who haven't heard of fish sauce understand what it is. Again, not the hour-long lecture version, but how is it made? What does it do?
Okay, so I was really lucky in 2017. I've been seriously curious and researching and reading and put up a grant proposal to do further study, 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. But in 2017, I got the opportunity to spend a month in Vietnam just wandering around on my own, exploring fish sauce venues. And for about 5 days, I was fortunate enough to spend my time on the island of Phu Quoc, which is it's part of Vietnam, but it's off the southern coast of Cambodia, which is renowned for fish sauce. So, tip to listeners, if you don't know which fish sauce to choose, turn the bottle around, and if it comes from Fuquoc, it's probably the best stuff you can buy in the U.S. So, anyway, here's the condensed version of what happened. I was staying, with the owner of this fish sauce company. We got a call at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The anchovies are running about 45 miles out. Get on the boat, spend about 6 hours chugging out to sea. Night falls, turn on Klieg lights over the boats, drop huge nets about 5 kilometers in diameter around where the fish were supposed to be, bring up 1,000 kilos of anchovies at a time. They drop them onto the deck of the boat while they're still alive. They have one hold that's full of rock salt. They just pile rock salt on top of the live fish, rake it together, and scoop it up and put it into another hold. And then they drop the net again. And they do this over and over throughout the night. When the hold is full, next morning, 7 a.m., we chug back to shore, and they offload the salted fish into large tanks. These were made out of cypress. They were held about 3,000 liters each tank, and they then ferment them on the salt. They were alive. They're dead now. The salt sucks all the juices out of the fish. The body of the fish drops to the bottom of the tank. The liquid rises to the top. They pump the liquid back over once a day just to circulate it. And after a year, they start testing. Well, they test it for quality periodically, but after a year, if everything's gone right, it's properly fermented. And then they take off the clear stuff from the top, and they put it in a bottle, and they sell it. It's anchovies and salt, period, the end, fermented, room temperature. Ambient temperature is probably 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's it. It's anchovies and salt.
You can all go home now. You have just been educated on what fish sauce is. This is why, again, people, you're not going to hear me be this quiet this often. But when you have certain people giving you this information, you got to listen. And, it sounds so simple. It really does. The way, Chef presents it is beautifully simple. But when you add, we're talking about teaspoons to tablespoons, like couple like small amounts, not massive. You're not pouring it in. The brightness that it presents with, when you consider that it is a simple fish and salt reduction. I'm not sure if that qualifies as a reduction. I'll be corrected momentarily if it isn't. But
it's not really. No, the only reduction happens is through evaporative loss. So it's really not it's just more of a fermentation. There's some evaporation because it's ambient temperature.
Yeah.
But not what most cooks would think of as reduction. There's no simmering and there's no high heat evaporative loss.
Simply ambient temperature, let it go, and
yeah, it's like aging bourbon.
Nice. So there you go, kids. Bourbon and fish sauce. They're close cousins. Maybe not close cousins, but they're cousins in a certain way.
Well, corn, fish, and
you can catch a trout with a corn kernel. There you go.
Yeah, you can't catch a corn with a fish, but you can grow corn with a fish.
That's right. We're making connections all over the place here.
Circle of life.
It is, man. It's the circle of life. So Fish Sauce 101 Masterclass aside, let me ask you one more question about, where Chef Pardus came from, and it's one I'm very interested to hear. Now, I know when you said at 17, you hopped out, you did your own thing, but when was it that you knew, like, food was going to be your life? It wasn't just, I got to get out of here because I'm sure there's more shit to eat, than what I'm being served. What was it that made you become, like, the freaking megalodon that you are today? What made you realize food was going to be your life?
it's really humbling to say this, actually, because I didn't have a clear idea. I know you've read everything Anthony Bourdain's ever written,
Sure.
but it was sort of along the same lines. It's like I identified with the sort of like pirate values of the kitchen before I identified with the quality of the food. For me, I couldn't hold down a straight job. It was just like bone-chillingly gutless. I liked the action. I liked the adrenaline. I liked the pirate life of the kitchen. And so I didn't know how to turn that into a career until my father actually said, "Hey, did you ever hear about this place called the Culinary Institute of America?" And I'd already wasted his entire college savings fund at Boston University after, dropping out. And I said, "No, I'd never heard of that place, but it sounds cool." And I read up on it, and I went to the CIA. And I went through the CIA program, which taught me something, gave me a basis, but didn't give me a passion. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I met my first wife, who was also a CIA grad, and got a job at a Four Seasons hotel. And I was going to do my pretty mundane, pretty boring job at a different location. I was a basic line cook, just banging it out. And she was coming home with menus and ideas that I was going, wow, there's food like that? Really? Mm-hmm. And then I met her chef, and I went into stage at her place, and then he invited us to have dinner there on one of her nights off, and I was like, oh my God, I never knew food could taste like that, or look like that, or could be presented like that. And all of a sudden, I had this enormous hard-on for everything that had to do with, and this was 1984, l'univers cuisine. And I read everything I could, and I wrote letters to every chef who was working in the U.S. who was doing food at that level. And then finally I got, a post someplace. But it was being associated with someone who worked for someone who was presenting high-level food that lit my fire.
Nice. That's sometimes that's all it takes, man. You just need to be the kindling that sits near the fire, and you catch fire.
Yeah, and that just set me off. That was the catalyst right there.
Nice. And so, fast forward innumerable years, which we won't do a year count. We don't need to do that, although we're all comfortable with chronologically where we're at. And
well, I'm going to drop a couple of names because it's important to me to recognize where I came from.
Sure.
The chef de cuisine at Bocuse in Lyon during the 70s was named Udo Nischitnis, who was a Czech-born, German-raised, French-trained, but he had been Bocuse chef de cuisine for 10 years, and he opened one of the first restaurants of repute in Napa Valley, and he hired me on as a cook, and I learned more from him than I probably learned anywhere else.
Nice.
So Udo at the Miramonte in St. Helena, California in 1984, first big mentor. Moving forward, next big mentor, Larbe de Roche, Moroccan-born, French-trained, worked for Jean-Louis Paladin at the Watergate Hotel for 12, maybe 15 years, became his sous chef, then left to become his own chef, and hired me to be his sous chef. So I'm working with these Michelin-starred people at a very young age, and I'm getting better and better and better, and just having more knowledge. I'm just soaking it up like a sponge. So those are my two huge influences early on.
Wow. I mean, to hear, I know we ball break back and forth pretty heftily when we're in each other's presence, but to hear you speak with such reverence definitely tips the hat to the role these folks played in your coming up. And it's true, here in this small town in which we reside, my kids will be with me and we'll be walking through a store and someone who is a grown-ass adult now will be like, "Oh, Mr. Rossler." And I'm like, "Oh, holy shit, you were in 6th grade when I taught you." But you never forget that person. You know what I mean? And I think, that's what you're doing here, and yet that's what you're doing present day, too. So it's like you're paying it forward. Whether, I know humility is a thing you entertain way too often, I think, but then again, I'm an asshole, and, you think you're an asshole, too, so that works out well. But, I think sometimes you got to realize the role you're playing and the work you're doing, and for you to call back to that is just amazing. I'm sure they had heavy hands in your upbringing.
Well, talking about paying it forward, I got inspired by something. I'm not sure what. Maybe it was my dad's Japanese influence on me, back in the early 1960s. But for some reason, I became fascinated with Vietnam once I started teaching Asian cooking. And I started putting together student field trips to Vietnam from the Culinary Institute long before they were doing international field trips. This was 2004, 2005. And the people who helped me put those trips together and leading those trips and taking 19-year-old kids from Buffalo, New York, or wherever, Pennsylvania, and taking them halfway around the world, showing them through markets, telling them to pick out their ingredients because we're doing a guest chef dinner at the Sofitel Hotel Saigon tomorrow night, turned those kids into superstars. Nice. I can name almost all 15 of the kids that went on the 2005 trip with me by name because I'm still in touch with them. And they're all making like twice as much money as I am. Wow. They're all fantastically successful. And I will swear up and down that they brought it with them, and I just helped guide. But they will all turn around and point to me, and so will their parents, and say, "No, it was you."
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll take some credit for that, so it's not all humility, but I'm paying it forward because I'm seeing a handful of people over a long period of time who are fantastically successful and really happy in their lives and their careers, and they all attribute it to me.
Yeah.
And, that'll let me die happy.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, man, you should hold that close from one teacher to another. There's you can't imitate that feel. You can't imitate that feeling like at all. So, you've inspired. You continue to inspire. You come on. You take time out of your insane race, and come on this show to spread your message even more. And so a couple of questions, if we can kind of jump forward then to your present day, where you're influencing these folks. I got to know, like, if I'm sitting in Chef Pardus's classroom or I'm in Chef Pardus's kitchen, and we're talking food trends, and let's focus in on Asian cuisine, despite how much you maybe have disdain for that term. What's going to be the next big thing that comes out of Asian cuisine here in the States? What do we see come through?
Oh, jeez. I'm I'm rooting hard for Korea. It's like, I think historically the Americans have learned geography and cuisine through the lens of war. Mm-hmm. And so after World War II, French and Italian cuisine boomed in the U.S. After the Korean War, prior to the Korean War, there was no real Korean cuisine to speak of, except, nothing that you would export anyway, very humble, stuff. But the GIs who were stationed in Japan as support, like my father was, I think that led to the sushi explosion in the 70s. Then the Vietnam War came around, and where the U.S. GIs went for R&R was mostly Thailand. So the first thing we saw hit in the 70s and early 80s was Thai cuisine, and not far after that, now there's a banh mi or a pho shop on every street corner in every town in the U.S. Mm-hmm. So I'm kind of expecting that we're going to start seeing a lot of Iranian, Iraqi, and Afghani stuff, but it might be too soon. Mm-hmm. I'm still pulling hard for Korea because, first of all, the Korean government's putting a lot of money into the American market to try to influence it. Plus, they're sending a lot of students through the Culinary Institute and Cornell and a lot of other places. So there's a lot of food-savvy, business-savvy Korean entrepreneurs out there, and their government is backing it. Mm-hmm. And they have a lot of things in common with us. We like beef. They like beef. I think the last statistic I saw, they eat more beef than Americans do per capita.
Bulgogi, right? Bulgogi.
Yeah, well, not just. I mean, yeah, bulgogi and kalbi, and there's a zillion different ways they prepare beef. But beef, barbecue sauce, something a little spicy, a little sour, a little sweet, pickles. What's the difference between a kosher, spear and a piece of kimchi? Not that much.
Not a hell of a lot.
Really.
Yep.
The fermentation process is exactly the same. It's just the seasoning's a little different. So if you like spicy pickles and you like beef, why wouldn't you like Korean cuisine? Mm-hmm. And I think Korean cuisine is coming on pretty strong. It's in the big cities. It's hitting its stride, and I think it's just a matter of time until it spreads to the rest of the country. So I think that's the next big thing.
Nice. So let's flip that coin then, because I'm sure, as tolerant as you are for things you have disdain for, there's got to be a trend or several that you're ready to see die a fiery death. Like what's popular, even if you don't enjoy it, that you'd love to see just go away.
Give me a context, because honestly, I'm just prone to look the other way if I don't like it.
All right.
Like,
I
learned a really long time ago that the fastest way to lose money in the food business is to try to educate people to eat something they don't want.
Listen to that, people. Record that. Put it on repeat if you need it. He's got a point. And so it might not necessarily.
I tried doing Nouvelle French cuisine in New Hampshire in 1986, and I went down in fucking flames.
I'm not laughing at. I'm laughing with.
If I was, if I did the same thing in Portsmouth,
yeah,
today, I'd probably get one Michelin star. But 25, 30 years ago,
yep,
I want prime rib. That was it. How many carbs can I buy for $10?
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. And isn't that, obviously it's a moving landscape. So if I had to say, how about I rephrase? So I don't rephrase for anybody typically, but I will rephrase for Chef Michael Pardus. If there is one thing that people love about Asian cuisine, and probably cheaper Asian cuisine, that you wish you could educate them on and educate them towards something better, what would it be?
Honestly, nothing.
Love it.
If they're interested and curious and adventuresome enough to step away from the pizza slice or the Big Mac and walk into a Panda Express and try, General Tso's chicken, good for them. Because, you know what? The first case of wine I ever bought was Sutter Home's White Zinfandel. So you gotta start, you gotta get up on the first rung of that ladder.
Yeah. No, you're right.
And once you're on the ladder, it's kind of hard to step back. Once you've had General Tso's chicken, McDonald's Big Mac doesn't really blow up your skirt very much.
God damn right it doesn't. Yes, chef.
And so then you're wondering, well, if this is what everybody's eating for $6.95 with rice, what are the people paying $12.50 for?
Next thing you know, you're on a back street in Laos eating God knows what kind of noodle and God knows what kind of bowl with what kind of broth, and literally having an orgasm in your chair.
Yeah, there's a few gastrointestinal steps you got to take before you get to Laos. But yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. You got to take a couple pills, couple regimens, but
yeah, it's not a huge leap.
No.
It's a bigger leap to get on the rung in the first place.
I mean, let me ask you something. Obviously, as the freaking icon that you are, is there a better feeling in life, carnal pleasures aside, than giving somebody a food that they have not had before, that they were scared to try, and watching their face blow up like a fireworks display?
No, that's, I think as a cook, as a chef, as a teacher, I think watching that is a carnal pleasure.
Fair. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, if you look at the look at the base root of carnal.
Yep.
It's meat.
Yeah. No, you're right.
That's the meat of the subject. You're watching someone derive the meat of pleasure
from the experience. Yeah.
What could be more satisfactory than that? I mean, it's the same as sex.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at pleasure centers of the brain...
If you don't see that look on your partner's face, you don't feel so good.
I don't know what you're talking about, Mike. Moving on.
You mean you've never seen that look, or you don't know what it means to not see it?
I see that look. Every day she looks at me in the morning, she's like, oh, shit, I did what? So anyway, I digress. So, trends aside, current situation aside, I've got to talk to you about Ecuador. Now, that's going to sound random as shit to everybody listening, except for the two guys on the phone. Typically at this point, I ask what's going on with your current gig, and yet this is a big left turn for you. Talk to us about what's going on.
Well, actually, it's not a big left turn. There's like a 15, 20-year backstory. And okay. I'll give you the really fast cliff notes.
Okay.
In 2004, 2005, I became insatiably curious about Vietnam. I put together a couple of student groups where we did guest chef dinners over the course of a year and earned enough money through those dinners so that the students and I and the guest chefs could go to Vietnam for a month on a field trip. And somewhere along the line, one of the chefs brought in his PR manager, and she took a liking to what we were doing and started to promote us, and it made it go even more smoothly. And we then ended up bringing the 5 guest chefs and the public relations manager with us to Vietnam. And she booked us into a European hotel group that had hotels in Saigon, Hue, and Ho Chi Minh City. Saigon is Ho Chi Minh City. Saigon, Hue, and Hanoi. And we did guest chef dinners in each one of those cities and collected the proceeds and donated them to a charitable fund in Vietnam to train young street kids and orphans in hospitality skills so they could get off the streets.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, so that was 15 years ago. Through that endeavor, I became very tight friends with a lot of people, but the 3 principals were Wendy Chan, who was the public relations person, Cedric Tovar, who is a chef who began his career as a apprentice with Joel Robuchon and is now the executive chef at the Palace Hotel in New York.
No big deal there, kids. For those who are new to the adults table, I just took a screenshot the other night watching some old Iron Chef Japan when Joel Robuchon was up in the guest box. And I was going to post a trivia question. Does anyone know who this is? I mean, literally legendary status there. Sorry to pop in there, but had to.
No, that's okay. One of the highlights of my entire life is having Christmas Eve dinner at his restaurant in Paris in 1985, 3 weeks after he got his 3rd Michelin star.
I could literally burn this show to the ground right now. I'm so frustrated. Like, wow, cool. Kick a little sand in my face, Mike. Great.
So I got Wendy Chan, who does marketing and public relations for Asian companies who want U.S. market share. I got Cedric Tovar, who's well-renowned chef on his own, currently with the Palace Hotel in New York, and Chris Johnson, who's a round-eyed white boy who became fluent in Japanese, lived in Japan for 3 years to study sake, and now is a sake sommelier at the samurai level, which is the highest level you can get. He judges international sake competitions.
Wow.
Wendy has gone on now to purchase, her and her husband have purchased a large tract of land on the Pacific coast of Ecuador, and they're building, they're in the process of building a eco-tourist community cooperative. In other words, they've got 25 acres. They're building select homes for people who want to live in a sustainable agriculture, sort of farm-to-table community. And they're also building smaller cottages and condominiums for travelers and tourists who want to come and join that for a short period of time. And they've built a pavilion and a commercial kitchen in which travelers, tourists, or large groups can come for seminars or retreats or weddings or special occasions. So it's they're developing a resort hotel sort of concept, but it's very strictly farm to table and thin to table. They have 2 acres of mature, developed organic garden. They've dug their own deep wells for fresh water, so they're sustainable in that sense. The Andes Mountains are only 40 miles away. They've got government permission to run an aqueduct from the glacial melt from the Andes to bring more fresh water to them directly. So they're not using any municipal water or processed water. And they're closer to the docks and the fishermen than the nearest town, so the fishermen have an arrangement with them to give them first choice of the catch.
Nice.
That's all come together within the last 3 years. And Wendy and Chris and Cedric and I have, for the last 15 years or so, whenever one of us gets something going, everybody joins in.
Nice.
And and they're just getting this thing in Ecuador up and on its feet. And their first big gig is inviting about 4 or 5 Ecuadorian chefs, growers, and then whoever else wants to join in, up to, I think, 50 people. And we're going to have a conference and then a gala dinner on January 25th. And it's in Puerto Cayo, which is on the Pacific coast near the, I think it's the northern side of Ecuador. On the 25th, I've been invited to come down because, like I said, whenever one of us gets something going, the others join in.
Mm-hmm,
so Cedric is the lead chef. We've got 4 Ecuadorian regional chefs coming in. Chris is going to handle all the, he's going to introduce sake as a pairing to all of these courses, and they've invited me to come along because Wendy is of Asian descent, and a lot of the garden is Asian vegetables, so they want somebody who can say, oh, yeah, I know what that is and what to do with it. And I talked to Cedric the other night, and we decided that we're not even going to think about the menu until we walk through the garden.
God,
so we're going to just get down there and pull it out of our hats.
God damn. Oh, my God. God. You got room for one more, Mike? You got room for one more? I mean, we could make a podcast out of it.
Yes, but you'll have to pay your own way. I mean, like, I'm paying for my own. The CIA is very, very graciously, by the way, giving me 4 days paid leave.
That was well done, by the way. That was a good tip of the hat. It seemed very genuine, very, very pronounced. It was well done.
They're given 4 days paid leave to go down there and participate in this for professional development and international relations. And as far as I know, it's not closed out. I'm paying my own way down, so I'm paying for my flights. Once I get there, Wendy is putting me up in one of their Airbnb places.
Nice.
And the food is what the food is. You know, it's like, you know, I'm a cook. I expect to get fed wherever I go.
Oh, for sure.
But if you want a link, I'll send it to you, and you're welcome. I'll check with Wendy, but I'm pretty sure there's some tables open.
No. Oh, my God. I can't. I have to go down to my main office down in Philly this Friday for literally a day, and it's taken like shifting mountains to make this happen. So believe me, as much as I would love to, that won't probably won't come to pass. But I mean,
6.5 hour red eye out of New York, man. Come on.
Yeah, I'll get right on it. I don't like sleeping on the couch that much. What can I say? So, man, I mean, that just sounds front to back. Just, I mean, an exciting venture for sure. But I mean, what a game changer. And I think it's probably, and you could obviously speak to this, you know, the way in which things are going to start to go in the hospitality industry towards eco-friendly.
Well, it's not huge right now.
Right.
But what I see is, right now, the biggest stressor on the hospitality industry is the cost of labor.
Sure.
Because the days where somebody who is educated and well-trained, working for sub-minimum wage, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, for 15 years before they get a break, Those days are gone.
They've come and gone.
Well, no, they are gone. So like I have 20-year-old students who they're willing to suck it up for 2 years to cut their bones, and then if they're not making enough money for 40 or 50 hours a week to have a reasonable life, then they're going to go into food photography, food journalism. They're going to go to NYU for an advanced degree in food policy, but they're not going to be in the kitchen.
No.
So it's going to stratify. You're going to have the low end where the people who don't want to or are not qualified to rise above a $15 an hour wage are going to be cooking at fast casual places.
Sure.
And then you're going to have the very high end, where costs really, if I go to Per Se with a party of 4, I know I'm going to drop $2,500. I don't do it very often, but when I do it, I know what I'm getting into, and I'm prepared for it.
Sure.
Some people can afford to do that once a week. Some people can afford to do it once a month. I can afford to do it maybe once every couple of years. But it's going to stratify like that. And you're going to have these places like Puerto Cayo in Ecuador where, you got to drop $1,000 on airfare and car service, and then you got to pay, a couple $100 for a Airbnb or an on-property site or a hotel nearby, and maybe you attend a conference, and maybe you eat, several really great dinners and attend some conferences with some world-renowned chefs. But that's going to set you back a few grand per person. And if that's what you're into and that's what you want to drop your money on, you will. But that's a huge statement. Between that and Applebee's is a big leap.
That is a big fucking leap. Jesus. Applebee's out of nowhere, right there. That's the hashtag for the episode. Applebee's out of nowhere, and you just pulled that off.
But honestly, I think that's what it's going to break down to, because the middle of the road restaurants where you can take your family out, have a decent meal for under $150.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
They're gone. They're gone.
Yeah. Yeah. You're spot on, man. There's no arguing that. And obviously what's decent to some is, different to another. But, if we're looking middle of the road, middle lane, I think that's an incredibly accurate statement.
Well, for my parents, going a night out at Applebee's is like a night out. That's fine with them.
Right.
For Beth and I, we would have to go to Manhattan, get a hotel, drop $1,000 in a restaurant.
Yeah.
So, all up a weekend to have a really good meal where we'll both go, wow.
Right.
We couldn't do this at home.
Right. Oh, exactly.
It's going to cost us $1,500.
But that's what you want to spend. And this is actually something, Greta and I talk about all the time, about how we spend the money, on the boys, on our family. It's like, what do you want? Do you want things or do you want experiences? And when you look at those experiences, that's what I want. I want to be able to hearken back to that. Do something for me that I've never seen done. Whether it's, that going into Manhattan, or, I don't know, making late night brisket, which shouldn't have been humanly possible. And yet there we were on a random Saturday in May, enjoying brisket that was made. I don't even know how quickly it was made, but it got made.
Well, no, I think you hit a really good point, and I definitely see the demographics shifting in that direction.
Yeah.
Is that people would rather spend money on experience than ingredients, or experience rather than things. You can just Google it and you'll see it.
Yeah.
It's that common. People would rather do something memorable than have something that's going to sit in the closet.
Yep.
You know, everybody's got too much junk in their house and
Fair.
not enough pleasurable memories in their brain.
Fair. I can tell you.
Well, you slept in my house.
I
right?
did, man. Your dogs loved me.
I live like a freaking impoverished bad because you know it's like I spend all my money on other shit. I don't care if my couch is from Salvation Army.
Yeah.
I don't care if I haven't bought $2,000 worth of paint in the last 10 years. It's like I'd rather spend my money on plane tickets and food and blouse.
Yeah, for sure. And just to go on the record, again, the humility thing is biting him. Look, I'm actually correcting him. This is a good place to be. Yeah, no, it's not that. But, yeah, you know, you roll up, and for me, the experience was like doing the things with you guys. And I think this talks to the culinary mindset in that, like, just to experience that with you in your home. And then to have you guys come over here and hang out and do the culinary shit in our home, it was like, holy shit, we are cut from the same cloth. We get each other in a way that, like, you don't necessarily find. And so, you know, to do that, to spend the money on the things, you know, we took our two kids when they were, I'm going to say 8 and 6, to what would be, I don't know, I think if you plunked it in Manhattan, it was Gary Vatican's restaurant. Gary, you met him when you were here.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, here on Main Street in Bloom, we took our two boys out, 8 and 6, to Gary's restaurant, Seasons on Main. And I mean, people gave us looks like, what the fuck are you doing? And here's the thing. I now have a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old in the kitchen who can wield a 7-inch chef knife and mince onion, mince garlic whenever I need it. So tell me about where and why you spend your money.
Uh-huh.
So.
Yeah, my daughter's 21 years old, and she's still trying to figure out what she's going to do with her life. But right now, she's the most badass prep cook in New Paltz.
Nice.
And she's making like a couple of dollars over everybody else's pay grade, and she's the boss.
Nice.
And why? Because she was born into it.
Yeah. She gets it.
And Beth's daughter is 12, and I asked her, do you want me to cook you dinner? And she goes, nah, I got it.
Nice. Sid the Kid. God damn it, Sid the Kid.
You know, so it's like it is. It's a lot about the experience.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, real quick, let's clean up with some after questions here. A little bit of fun to round out the episode. Chef Pardus, I'm standing in your kitchen. You can pick whether professionally or at home. I'd say it's probably at home. And I actually know this answer because I was there and I heard it. What music would I listen to in your kitchen?
Punk mix, Velvet Underground, Ramones, that kind of stuff, you know.
Of course. Why wouldn't it
Pretty
be?
much the same thing you would have listened to in Tony's kitchen.
Hey, oh God. I have to tell you, I know I've shared with other people, and I don't know that you and I have shared it. It would have been Saturday into Sunday night of the 100th weekend. I was kind of downstairs, kind of wrapping up shit, just drinking a couple more beers. And down in the movie room, I toss on this DVD that I had ordered from Travel Channel of No Reservations. It was the China episode, 2006, I want to say. And Beth rolls down to grab a beer, and she sees it, and she stops, and she sits down. And I had this, like, holy shit moment where, like, there was my 1 degree of separation in that very moment. As she talked about being there and what happened and everything, I'm like, my fucking God. Listen, I didn't get the interview, but I got as close as I think I possibly can, and I'm honestly happier for it. But I had to share that with you because I know, like, I didn't get a chance to share that with you, and that was just such a cool moment for me because I think those of us on this side of the fence who didn't know him personally, who
vault him up on a pretty high pedestal for this. For me, it's for the sociologic work that he did in the culinary field. It's just such a, such an iconic figure, and then to have that happen, and then to have you both here, and now both friends, it's crazy to me. So, to hear you say Velvet Underground, I almost offered to answer it for you in the hopes that it literally would have been Velvet Underground, Ramones, Iggy Pop.
Yeah, pretty much. That's my kitchen music. Yep.
That's awesome.
But I have to tip my hat to Thomas Keller. You know what his soundtrack is, right?
Silence.
No, Reservoir Dogs.
What? I thought that like if you go into French
Little
Laundry,
Green
it's silent.
Bag,
Oh,
man.
Little Green Bag is the shit. What? Thomas Keller?
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, the soundtrack to Reservoir Dogs. That's the soundtrack in his kitchen, or it used to be. I don't know, maybe it's changed.
That's one of the greatest soundtracks of all time, hands down, no question. And I've reached out to Keller's people before, so now that I know that, I may be like, hey, I got a little trivia fact for you. Maybe this gets me behind the velvet rope. I'm not sure, but that's that's so cool. All right, let me ask you another one. You're going to the deserted island, and you can only take 3 foods or food type items with you. Inexhaustible supplies. They don't run out, but only 3. What would they be and why?
What's the latitude of the island?
God damn it. You were so well behaved for a while, Mike. What happened? I don't know.
Well, I don't know, a desert island off the, in the Siberian archipelago is a hell of a lot different than Tahiti.
Jesus Christ.
Give me a context.
You put it where you want it. Where is your ideal island that you would get stranded and then pick your 3? You get to pick that. 115 episodes. No one's ever asked the latitude of the fucking island.
Well, if I'm in Bali, I don't need anything, man.
I love it. I love it.
I got everything I need. I've got pig. I've got coconut. I've got tropical fruit. If I go higher elevation, I got coffee. I got, in certain latitudes, I don't need much. I can ferment my own booze. I can make my own pickles. I can cure my own meat. It's when you get into the extremes that things get difficult.
You know what? I'm going to give you, of anybody who's ever been on, anybody who will ever be on, you're the only one to date who has had the knowledge to say that, and I'm going to like to say it. You don't need shit. You just take what's, god damn. And you're spot on, though. I mean, you look at Bali, and like you said, you go to different elevations, different things, different areas, different things. So, yeah, I can't. This is why I said, people. You heard me in the opening.
I mean, I'd like a nice Japanese or German chef's knife, but if I don't have one, I can make something myself.
You can take that with you. I'm so happy with the answer. I'm just gonna give it to you. I'm gonna say, here you go. We're gonna trap you on Bali, which sounds like possibly the best prison sentence anyone's ever been offered.
No, it's too easy. Man, put me on Lombok. That's a little bit more primitive, or put me somewhere where I really got to work for it. But it depends. It's all dependent upon latitude, and then maybe all I need is some seeds. I don't know.
Put me on Lombok. Again, I can't even spell Lombok. All right. So anyway, next question. The infamous late night question. Last Supper. What is it and why?
Last Supper. Huh.
I got him, people. I got him.
Well, I'll tell you what. It's not going to be elaborate. I don't know. Good bread, ripe camembert, Concord grapes, Parago black truffles.
Nice.
A bottle of bourbon and a bottle of good Pinot Noir.
Bottle of seasoned bourbon, bottle of Pinot Noir.
And, well, it's my last supper, but I'm not going to wake up with a hangover, so I'll drink them both. And, I foie gras. I'll take foie gras, but I'd also take chicken livers.
Foie gras and chicken livers on top of that sounds amazing.
Or.
But if
you're gonna give me chicken livers, give me some duck fat to cook them in.
Nice. Give the man some duck fat to cook them in while they're at it. There it is. And finally, the last question, the simplest, but perhaps the most complex, although I don't imagine it would be for you, sir. What is food to you in a single word?
Love.
Love. I love it. Because that's what it is. Whether you're slapping around some brisket late night to help heal people up, whether you're making green tea matcha misus, that there's nothing but love surrounding it all.
To me, it's either an expression of love or an acceptance of love.
Yeah, because you've got to trust that person to feed you or to feed them.
If you're giving it, it makes you happy because you're expressing and giving what you, at least for me, I love to cook for people that I love because I'm expressing my love to them by giving them the best thing that I can do. And cooking is the best thing that I can do. I suck as a carpenter. You know, if I built you a house, it would not be a show of love. You know, if you make something for me, at this point in my life, I've come to accept it, whether I love it or I hate it. I accept if you offer it to me with love and affection. It tastes like love and affection, no matter how bad it is.
Yeah.
Or if it's delightful, then it's embellished.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. Love, and what a great note to end it on. Food being love being food, and Chef, obviously we know each other outside of the show. Anytime I can do these episodes where I have a little knowledge, of the person outside, it's always easier going, a bit more free flowing. But much like I would thank anybody, man, thank you so much for being on and for just sharing your story the way that you did. It is truly appreciated, and I'm sure there will be, a couple hundred to a couple thousand listeners who appreciate the living shit out of your candor, your story, and everything that goes with it. So thank you again, bud.
Hey, well, Sean, I'm always happy to talk to you, and I'm always happy to spread the love.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Where can people connect with you? I know My Lucky Noodles, which we really didn't get into.
That one's dead. That's dead.
That's dead. Okay. Instagram handle still alive or not?
Don't do it.
Okay, cool.
I don't. I'm too old to do Instagram. Sorry.
Nice.
Let them contact you and you forward it to me. Let's do it that way.
All right, you heard it here. I'm Chef Pardus's people, so you better get ready for a long line and a long wait. There, you jerks.
That's okay. I'll answer anything that's forwarded from you. But I only have 2 email accounts. One's for work, one's for personal, and my personal one's getting to the point where I wanted to shut it down and start another one.
Oh, I hear that.
But if it's from you, RE blah blah blah, I'll jump on it like flies on foie gras.
Flies on foie gras. I love it. And by the way, I don't know if you saw or if Beth shared with you that we are, this is totally personal, but I'm going to do it on air because I don't really give a shit. It's my show. Get a show of your own if you care that deeply. So we're putting a pool in the backyard, and I'm expecting you guys to be over here this summer, if not sooner. So there's that.
Sounds good to me. Just got to clear it with Beth. She's the one with the complicated schedule, and I'm planning on August in Ecuador again. So there you
go. So it's got to be before August, and obviously after the cement dries. So, man, again, Pardus, you're literally a rock star in my eyes, and I can't thank you enough, buddy.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm not sure I deserve it, but I appreciate it.
You do deserve it, and I'll drink you over that. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode number 116 of the Coarse Grind Podcast. My guest this evening, the just iconic Chef Michael Pardus. Our producer, as always, has been the lovely, voluptuous Johnny Leland Robinson, a.k.a. the Reverend Johnny Lamoria. Be sure to check out all things happening Libertarian in the Honesdale, as well as Cinematic Pig's Feet. Hopefully he doesn't make me watch another art Russian film again, but who knows? Shit has happened weirder. Next episode will be number 117, bringing it back to the homestead. Stay tuned. Are you passing through central Pennsylvania and looking for one of the best dining experiences and craft brew menus around? Look no further. Turkey Hill Brewing Company and 991 Central Road in Bloomsburg, PA has everything you could ask for and then some. Service, food, beer together. Unbelievable. Be sure to check them out. Call them today for reservations. 570-387-8422. Call today.